Thank you very much, David. As David says, please do respond and please share your views. It'll be interesting to find what's at the end of all of this where we are. I think we're at a very interesting time in the BIM world because of our very recent BIM mandate. So I expect that a lot of things are going to change, particularly for David when he does his next survey. I should imagine there'll be completely different findings in 2025 because it's mandated, because Ireland is going to end up having to BIM up and mandate now, so it's no longer optional. So I should imagine the findings then will be very, very interesting. And so I'll start off. I have some questions. Please put your questions in the chat box if you have any questions. But I'll start off with the first question for Guadalupe. Guadalupe, I suppose the question is, how can the people who have the responsibility for BIM make it more appealing to the older generation? And the reason I say the older generation, because the vast majority of people in work are of the, older generation. And having digital natives myself, I know that kids are very digitized. They're completely digitized, so it's no issue to them. That's all they ever want. They don't want paperwork. They don't want any of that kind of stuff. They're very collaborative. But for the people who are out there at the moment, how can you get the older groups how can you encourage them? What do you think needs to happen?
I think in general, it's just great if the new generations bring these new methodologies and processes, just show them what we can achieve with this. And I know it's difficult and it needs a period for a transition to everybody to accept it and start adopting it as well. But I think eventually, if you show the benefits of it, what can you achieve, and how much more the data you can accumulate in a 3D model or just in general for a project from start to finish, they will see the benefits of utilizing BIM. And I think it's just joining them, just talk to them, check the new new advances as well, and also keep in mind that other governments, other countries have adopted BIM and how that benefits their countries, how we can bring that into our own workflows. I think just knowing how different countries already did changes, so we can just adopt and take what worked for us, because of course not everything works for everyone. But I think just joining them, just talking to them, and eventually they will also understand. Day to day, it will be helpful to have.
Thank you, Guadalupe. I have a question for you, David. David, going forward, what would you expect to see in your next survey? What changes would you expect to see in your next survey? It's interesting how AI has overtaken, and there's a lot about AI right now, and I think everyone is aware of it. There's a huge AI awareness, but there's not a usage in it. But we are definitely aware of the possibilities, and they're unlimited. So going forward for the 2025 one, what changes would you expect to see? That's probably a difficult question, but
it's all right. I mean, it's hard to predict, but as you say, it probably would be quite likely that people are using AI more and have found more practical uses for it by then. Some of the things I've seen people talk about with AI have been, I think, to help guide people as to some of the pitfalls as well. So I think at the moment, I think there's an element of caution with some people, just making sure that they use it in the right way, and they don't get caught up with any issues to do with things like data protection, depending on where they're sharing information and onto what platforms and that kind of stuff, depending on what you're using it for. But I would imagine seeing that would increase. I've been a bit surprised not to see the use of sort of kind of immersive tech not increase more, because I've seen quite a few examples for how that can be quite helpful, but that doesn't appear to have continued to grow in the same way as some other things. In terms of BIM itself, and in Ireland, as I mentioned before, we did see growth in the use of BIM around the time of the mandate in the UK, and now that there's more of a kind of drive here with the kind of the legislation in Ireland, then I would imagine that might help to accelerate things a little bit from that point of view. I think the momentum needs to be continued. I think perhaps what we might have seen a little bit in the UK is attention being diverted a bit, because obviously Brexit happened around that time, and perhaps there wasn't as much momentum that continued with that afterwards. So perhaps that's one of the reasons why it may not continue to kind of grow after that so much. So I think there's some of the things. I think we've seen a lot of talk around offsite construction. I know there's been some setbacks with modular over the last year or so, but that does seem to be an area that perhaps might continue to develop as well. So they're all kind of just speculating a little bit, but they're things I wonder might change over the next few years.
Thank you, David. Interestingly, when you look at the surveys, Ireland tends to mirror, to a lesser extent, the UK actually. And one of the big changes in the UK is the manufacturing offsite and the modular construction and all the rest of it, offsite manufacturing. So I expect that will be a big change going forward because the housing crisis that everyone faces everywhere. You have to find ways of producing better quality, quicker, cheaper. So what's your view on that? Do you think that will change in the UK as well as in Ireland? Because BIM is an enabler.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's kind of my opinion, but there's a lot of sense with it in involving in that way, and things like dealing with the weather that we have, and that kind of thing, and being able to sort of make things a bit more predictable and manufacture things inside and transport them. So there's a sense in that. I know there have been some drivers. The UK government's been pretty keen to promote it. So that that I think helps. So I would think there are things like that which will help it to progress. But it's hard to say. Yeah, hard to say for sure.
Thank you, David. Just another question for you, Guadalupe. Does reluctance still exist, in respect to BIM in the use of the Irish construction industry? Are we still reluctant, do you think? And why is the main reason we are reluctant, do you think?
I think it happens a lot when people maybe don't understand the change or what it is. They're reluctant to actually adopt it first. I think at the moment, if someone is interested, they will go and will get information about BIM and courses and get upskilling or reskilling. Individuals will try to find that. But then if you are not, you might be in the construction industry, but you really don't interact much with other teams or companies that work with BIM daily, maybe you don't see a reason why. And then because before the mandate, it wasn't a mandate as well, it wasn't mandated BIM. It was something that people would need to adopt if they would really want to. So it's not that they had to. So that also could be difficult if they don't really know what BIM is, they don't have the knowledge for it, they wouldn't really look for it. So I think now with more courses and with they will have a new education, and now with the internet as well, you can look and search for all the information you need. I think it's going to be easier as well for people to accept BIM and understand. And if they need any questions about it, they want to look at, there's easier and faster ways as well to get that information to you. The thing eventually, I think the transition will get there, but yeah, it's a change is always difficult.
True, very true. Yes, it is. David, just a question for you. One more is, I suppose we've been talking about BIM for what seems like forever in many ways. Now we have come an awful long way, and we've gone from BIM awareness to BIM usage, and we're getting much better at it. And so I suppose really, my question is it still important to talk about BIM, or should we be talking more about other technologies and about more information management? Because I think when people think BIM, or some people anyhow, they see it just a 3D model. That's their idea of BIM. So do you see going forward the questions will change? There'll be less BIM and more information management, maybe, or more, new technologies?
Yeah, perhaps it's one of the things we've kind of debated and discussed a bit, partly when we were looking at how to continue running the survey, because as you say, it's been talked about a lot for 10, 15 years or however long. But it's quite tricky, because I think you're trying to kind of manage a discussion with people who've got lots of different levels of experience, and people who have been working with it and helping to evolve it throughout that time, who've perhaps moved on quite a long way and are looking at the next thing and have embedded it all and getting the benefits from it. But then you've got other people who are perhaps quite new to it, still understanding what it really is and what it can do. And so perhaps would benefit from support and guidance and education around it. So it's I suppose it's a challenge to try to engage with people at these different ends of the spectrum, really. I think most people welcome plain language and simple ways of talking about things. So the idea of talking about something which is a concept everybody can kind of identify with in terms of better information management seems a good thing. But then I guess you still need some kind of standard, and you still need some kind of terminology to help you actually do it in practice, I guess. So there's got to be that too, I would imagine. So it's maybe the way of just balancing those two things. And I hear all the time that BIM is an enabler for the other technologies and the other ways of bringing technology into construction. So I guess it has to be there in some way. It's just perhaps eventually it might just be kind of behind the scenes, and we're talking about it less if it's working, and instead we're talking about the next new technology. So.
Yes, I'd actually agree with that. I think BIM is behind all the AR and the VR and the AI and all because people are interested in BIM, and then they see what everything else can do. So I do agree that it is it is the start of it all. I've got another question for Guadalupe. Guadalupe, could you elaborate more on the action plan that you referred to in your paper? You discussed about an action plan.
Oh, yeah. Well, this refers to really a mandate. So there are a few different action plans that can be the government it's already intervening in the BIM adoption and digital transition for the country. And then we have also the educational institutions that are adding courses and updating their curricula with BIM subjects as well. So they are introducing those things into the country. So that's, for example, that's a major thing. But then companies itself, like private companies, I think CPD, just in trying to get CPDs, a lot of training for the employees, and will make people more be more approachable for everyone, really. Because once people know what they are looking for, they will be more good to accept it, no? So it would be just training, a lot of reskilling, maybe a lot of as well standards to just embrace all the knowledge you can get. Just trying to distribute like standards, get some project recommendations, and just pilot projects for companies just to try BIM and see if it works, what it works for a company. And I think everything like BIM departments would really do a lot of advancements, or would really improve the performance of a company, as the BIM department has a lot new tasks that will help each discipline in the company.
Thank you, Guadalupe. Now, I'd like to thank David and Guadalupe both for very good presentations and for answering the questions. And I would like to remind everyone to go back to the main room because Alan will be doing his closing address. So thank you very much. And I'd be interested to see what we have 2 years from now, to see what all these new results that show the MBS survey. That should be interesting. And of course, the skills gap. Watch this space and see where we are. It'll make comparisons. Thank you very much. And I'm hoping you're enjoying it. And I'm hoping that you, as I say, return to the main room to watch Alan's closing address.